Hello. So we can maybe do introductions and then we can get into questions. But this panel is about power in PoS blockchains. Are they properly balanced? So my name is Daniel. I head the protocols team at Stakefish.
I already got the mic, thanks. So my name is Adrien. I'm running Stakelab. So it's a validator on Cosmos ecosystem. We run 51 chains actually. And basically that's it. And also I'm working at Leisure since 5 years.
Hey, I'm James Parillo. I run the venture capital fund, Figment Capital, and also obviously it's part of a larger company called Figment, and we're a proof-of-stake infrastructure provider that runs over 60 chains and I think over 24 in the Cosmos ecosystem.
All right. Hey, I'm Felix. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Chorus One, also a staking provider, active on a little bit fewer chains than what was mentioned here, but around 30. And yeah, super happy to be here and like discuss this topic.
Hi, Ron. I think you know me as your MC for today on the Village stage. I'm also co-founder and chief product officer at Kiln. We're a staking platform like you guys. We're on even fewer chains than you. We're on about 15 chains. We've been very Ethereum focused the last few years, but now we're broadening our reach. Yeah.
Cool. So I think we could just start with the question. Do you think, it's a yes or no question, do you think power in PoS blockchains are properly balanced? We just say yes or no, go down the line, and then maybe we can discuss it a bit.
I think so, yes.
Maybe.
No, it's a yes or no, Jim.
Oh, sorry. Yeah?
I'll take the no. Just
Okay.
No.
So we have two and two. So maybe you want to describe why you think it is balanced.
Okay, so let's start like with an overview of this, like how is it working? So basically, in the Cosmos ecosystem, if you don't know, it's working with validators, and validators represent a voting power. The more you delegate to a validator, the more voting power he got. So if he, on his side, try to say yes on the governance proposal, it will basically, if he has 10% of the chain, put 10% in a yes for the proposal. But the thing is, actually, if the delegators decide to overwrite and just put a no, then the power of the delegator representing by his shares directly goes to the no. So it changed the vote. So for me, the Cosmos ecosystem is quite like well educated. There is like ton of tools working on it. So I think I said yes because even if like validators got 10%, most of the delegators have their own opinion and basically just vote on it. If you just check, for example, on the most of the ecosystem, even on Cosmos, there is like on each proposal, I think like 50K approximate of people voting, so it's quite a lot. And if you compare to the Ethereum ecosystem, it's just like 1K or something like that. So,
What share of the token supply is that, roughly?
what do you say?
The share of people who are actually voting, would you say?
Yeah, I was meaning like on the amount of people just like basically voting on the proposal. Like it's not really well done in the Ethereum ecosystem. But on Cosmos, I think like with all the airdrops that have been made and the fact that if you vote sometimes on the vote, you get an airdrop. So yeah, I think they're used to. And for this reason, I think it's quite like okay, I would say.
I guess like, you know, proof of stake, when we're talking, just to clarify here, when we're talking about proof of stake and we're talking about like power and imbalance, like we're really focusing mostly on the Cosmos, right? Like Ethereum is still like incredibly new to proof of stake, right? Like, and so the only place where like governance and on-chain governance and proof of stake has really cut its teeth is in the Cosmos ecosystem, right? And so the experiences and the maturation of the entire ecosystem, like of proof of stake focuses squarely on the fact that like the Cosmos ecosystem is like where it's all happening right now. It's ahead of its time. I'll keep saying that at every panel I speak at. And so like, is it, like, I think like the idea of like whether it's like balance or power, like is a power balance, like depends on a number of questions that you're asking, whether it's like governance, whether it's like the investments and like who's holding tokens.
Let's use governance first. You
want to use governance first?
Questions later for you.
Yeah, sure. And so like, I think governance is like a super interesting one. I think and like even when you look at proof of stake on Ethereum, it's not a governance token. Like, it's essentially like the way that decisions are made in Ethereum versus the way that they're going to be made in Solana versus the way that they're going to be made in the Cosmos ecosystem are very different. The most interesting thing are like the governance thing, like the governance decisions that are being made in the Cosmos ecosystem. You can agree with some of them, you can disagree with some of them. Maybe we can talk about a few of the ones that we disagreed with at some point. But ultimately, like, it allows users that are staking their tokens to vote, and if you don't vote, then you essentially are like, you're essentially delegating your vote, similar to like how representatives in governments work. That you're like, when you delegate to Figment or you delegate to Chorus One or Stakefish or any validator, you might be thinking about it from the perspective of like, I'm getting charged a lower fee. But what you might not recognize is the fact that like, you're letting this other person vote on your behalf if you're not someone who actively participates in governance. And I think that's like something really important that like sometimes gets overlooked.
Yeah, I think I was the one that said no. I guess we're talking a lot about the systems that are in place in Cosmos to allow for power to be balanced in a way, and they are definitely there. I would agree that the mechanisms exist to the largest part. Maybe we could discuss like, does it just need to be a validator that you can delegate your vote to, or could there be like other parties involved in this too? I guess that could be like one feature that is added, but in general, they are very far ahead of the time in terms of like other ecosystems. But I guess, yeah, in practice, is the power balanced? Probably no, because yeah, there's a lot of problems with, I guess, also token distribution, who holds the tokens in the first place, and apathy, and like your vote doesn't matter, you just don't care about it, and like, yeah, a lot of things that make it in the end not so balanced as it probably could be, but the mechanism is there, I would say that.
Yeah, I think I said no for the similar reason. I mean, the one to add is like the active set to get into, you know, to be a validator in the Cosmos chains, I think has an impact as well. And that's something that, you know, I think Ethereum does differently. Anyone can run a validator. And yeah, I think that there's probably some interesting things to do around other delegation constructs than just, you know, one-off delegation of votes to a validator. Maybe some substructures for delegating for certain topics to certain people, like kind of a representative democracy type of thing. But yeah, I would say I agree with what you said. Yeah.
Do you think that type of representative democracy is a good balance? Because you're describing, right, if people have the ability to like change their votes as opposed to like what the validator they're delegating to is voting on, like that is that ability to exit from who you delegated to. But that's great, but then does it even make any sense? Like, does it actually make an impact? And if that balance is, if you have a balanced ecosystem that is balanced, you want that balance to represent the power to do what you just said, right?
Yeah, I think there's like two different types of validators, and we should probably be clear about like the types of validators that exist in the space, right? You'll have like enterprise grade validators, right? There's institutions that are staking to Figment, right? And the organizations that are up here, and we're all trying to like, and so institutions are delegating to us because maybe they don't want to participate in governance, right? Or maybe they trust us in the way that we think about how we're governing. And so as a result of that, we find like that we have like the obligation to be very clear about how we're signaling why we are voting the way we are, right? Like with the like supporting Terra and then not supporting Terra, right? Like we published like specific language and like thought about it a lot, and then went publicly and said, here's why we are going to stop supporting that ecosystem, right? There's also like core devs that are validating on these chains, and they're doing it for like they've contributed to the code, they're gonna run their own validator, and you know what, you should delegate to them as well, because like they are making the network and the ecosystem better. And so like you should be delegating to them as well. And so that's a different type of person and a different type of token holder that might be able to delegate their tokens to that validator, maybe because you appreciate how they're thinking about the space slightly different. Maybe because you think that they, you know, they deserve some like economic incentive for like the work that they've done. But like there's essentially more than one type of validator out there, right? And like we should like really think about like how we're delegating and making sure that we're doing it in like a responsible way, depending on like who you are and what your like how much time you have and like what your value, like what you value.
I want to. Does anyone have a comment on that statement?
I think, yeah, like one thing I guess worth mentioning is that, yeah, many people, like governance is a complex topic, these blockchains are complex systems, and there is, we are very close to the problems, and maybe the core engineers too, right? The validators that people delegate to, people trust that we understand it better, can make a better choice than them, because they just don't understand the problem in the first place, which is also like an education problem, but also just a time issue. And so I think, yeah, that's why people do it, and yeah, it makes sense.
And people like look to Chorus One, right, for like where like it's a signal, right? And they look at like sometimes hopefully they're looking at Figment as well, right? And it's like, what are you contributing? How are you explaining your position? And like other validators that maybe are a little smaller, right? Like and don't have as much time. Like they want to understand the situation, and maybe sometimes they can't like fully spend as much time. And so like by seeing how we are thinking about the space and disclosing it, it allows other people to like. It gives a signal, and it also helps people like frame their own, make their own decisions.
Yeah. So you brought up really interesting points around, right? Validators are communicating with each other, right? You guys get to see like what actually happens behind closed doors, maybe, right? You're saying like, hey, you'll get a DM, and it's like, what are you voting on this proposal for? And then is it just like a follow the leader kind of concept, or you're seeing like someone votes on a controversial proposal, and then everyone just like, right, that one domino falls and everyone else does. But like the point that you said, if there's a core dev that is also running a validator, right? Part of like the existence of these independent third-party validators from these foundation teams that created the code, the core devs, like the independence is there for like a check and balance. So then if there's a core dev that's running a validator, where is that check and balance coming from? Is he checking himself? Or like how do you separate that, right? Because if they're not, then you might as well just put them under one entity, under an umbrella.
Good question. So, I mean, I think core devs, right? I mean, like someone who's contributing to the code and is like working and like maybe producing some content, and is also like I think Jacob's a good example, right? Someone who's like core to like the ecosystem of the Cosmos, does a lot of goodwill, generally, and also like and runs validator. Like, do you want to delegate some tokens to him? Sure, you should, right? Cool. He like is adding value to it. No, I mean like I think like we've asked like a different question, like you were sending around some of the questions, and one of them was like, oh crap, I forgot what the question was. But no, I think like you should be able to contribute to. You don't have to delegate all your tokens to one validator, right? And so like you can like level it however you want to, and you can like delegate to a number of different validators within the same chain. You can delegate your rewards to a different validator than the ones that your principal investment is to. So I mean, it's not like a all or nothing like sort of answer. I think it's like nuanced, and it should be, and like you should kind of spread it out a little bit.
Yeah, actually, you put a good point. Like usually, the delegators thinks like the easy part, like the ease of use. So I'm gonna put like all my bags in the same validator. But the fact is, even like in any financial things you're gonna do, if you put your bag in one token and it crashed, then you lost everything. So you should just like consider as a delegator, and even if you're a company or anything, to distribute to the contributors. And actually, there is tons of good contributors, as you said. Even Jacob is a very nice one. But there is something like you should separate. There is kind of like here in the panel we have, for example, Kiln and Figment, and they run validators for other people. That's right.
So
you're running infrastructure for others. So it's kind of like centralization in some part, because if Figment goes down, then there is like tons of validators that goes down as well.
So you're saying like whitelisted validators, or you're saying like there was like a tweet that was like, how many validators are Figment running? And
yeah.
It was like, well, there's two. There's one that says Figment, and there's one that says Ledger by Figment. And it was like, that's a non-issue. Like, let's be careful here, right? I mean, but like ultimately, like, look, there's validators who run multiple. Like, even if you run one validator and it's on AWS, and everybody runs the validator on AWS, well, I guess if Amazon goes down, then like we're all screwed, right? So
Yeah, it's true.
there's like, so that's a centralizing factor as well. I don't like, we typically aren't running a lot of white labeled validators, is what I would say. Funds that want to, like funds or investors that have like some access to and want to run their own validator, maybe want their own name on it. There's definitely like best practices that can be taken in order to do that. One way would be to like make sure that one validator is running in a different geolocation than another. Another one would be to like run it one on AWS and run another one in like maybe Google Cloud and another one in bare metal. Like there's ways to like make sure that it's like not completely like central point of failure. But I don't think there's like a lot, like most organizations are not running like 5 validators out of 100 or something like that. That would be considered probably like not best practice.
I would say one big centralizing force is just the nature of the active set, right? Like you look up the list of validators, you probably delegate to most people probably delegate to someone who's up there, right? Because they're not likely to drop off the active set, right? I think that's a pretty big problem. Also for new people, new teams to get involved and start running validators, like you basically have to be early, right? You have to be early to contribute. I think that's the biggest probably centralizing factor.
Just to add to what James is saying, like I think most of the, not like this is maybe a little bit bearish talk, but I think most of the ecosystem and those institutions do be responsible. They're like, Coinbase is not only using one validator. They have like a good mix of a lot of those things. I have a question for you because you're coming from the Ethereum ecosystem a lot, right? There are multiple, like let's say core dev or client teams that do run software for these types of validators. But then when that balance between many different clients versus what we have in Cosmos, how do you see that coming from the Ethereum side? And then now it's just like one follow the leader kind of has a...
Yeah, I mean, I think like at all layers of the stack, you need to have different options. It's just like you were saying with AWS, right? We need to have different cloud providers, different hardware setups. In Ethereum, there's like 3 or 4 validator clients that are good, and there's a dominant one, but like it's something everyone tracks in like Prism dominance, right? Like, and then you need the same kind of thing at the level of liquid staking protocols as well, right? Because that's also something that's happening on all chains. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important to track those dimensions.
Yeah, we'll just add, I think in the end, it's the market dynamics, right? It's just a business as any other in a way, and where there are incentives, like someone will like build the product for it, and I guess it's a competitive landscape. People try to build the best product, and by nature of doing that, they will automatically decorrelate their setup, make it more secure, that it's actually like these factors that maybe be problematic, kind of make them not so problematic in a way. And I think, yeah, you cannot really like influence that market dynamic so much. It's gonna happen. Maybe you can try to do certain things, right? Like tracking, I think is a good point, like trying to raise awareness of certain things that are happening, or if someone gets too big. But I would just like to add that and just see it from that perspective.
Yeah, you brought up liquid staking, and I think now with like the passing of Proposal 72, we will have like this consumer app chain with Neutron, which is eventually going to bring, I would assume, like liquid staking through Lido. And Lido had its own fair share of controversy, right? On Ethereum, they control over 90% of all liquid staked ETH. And then there was that sort of conversation that they had where, are they going to voluntarily curtail themselves, or are they going to allow other options? So like, I mean, that is also an example of like power balance where you have a few particular individuals, and I think most of us are node operators for Lido, right? And that those decisions may not necessarily be reflective of the entire ecosystem of Ethereum, but they were made regardless. And I think, right, there was that assumption that Lido would kind of stop itself because of what had happened in 2014 with Ghash, with the Bitcoin hash rate. But then in this case, it wasn't, right? They advocated for more competition. So I'd be really curious to hear, right? That is like a borrowed concept, an analogy to sort of like the key decision makers in these ecosystems. Many of you guys are one of the largest in Cosmos, right? And a lot of the Cosmos SDK-based chains. right? If you advocate for competition versus just like voluntarily giving up or redelegating to other smaller validators, what is your sort of stance as an organization for that?
I mean, we all know each other. We all like each other. I think, I hope. Yeah? Okay, thanks.
Sounds like collusion,
I was a
Jim.
little worried there. No, but I mean, I think we all like each other, right? We collaborate, and I think it's like not a winner take. Like, I think decentralization is not winner take all. Like, right? It's like a rising tide lifts all boats, and I think that we think about it that way. We like message each other in public. We message each other like in Telegram as well. But like, I think like Commonwealth, one of the coolest things about Commonwealth and like in crypto Twitter in general is that like people do their best thinking and their best decision making like in public, and it's really cool to see. And like that, like you can get challenged and be like, you know what, I was wrong. Like, and I'm open to being wrong in public. Hopefully, people remember when I'm right in public as well. But I think like it's. Like Lido is like a really interesting one, right? I mean, I think like Lido is a good actor in the space. Number one, right? Number two is like they gave governance rights not just to the LDO token, which essentially would centralize like staking for Ethereum, but they also like started to give like they thought about it a little bit more and said, you know what, SDETH, they deserve a vote also, and I would agree because I don't have any LDO tokens, but I do hold SDETH, and I would like a vote on like how the protocol is run, right? And so like I think like as long as like steps are being made in the right direction like that, like that's a show of goodwill that like should be kind of considered and like and appreciated, I think.
Yeah, I think totally agree to that, and yeah, keeping people accountable, open, right, transparent. You have it's right the core concept of blockchain. It's open source, and we can see how the systems work, and we can kind of intervene if it's not working as it should, I guess. But I'm taking it back to the whole question: should it like centralize, or should they kind of limit the power, like Lido in this example, or in general, should you do that? Again, I think like market-wise, probably no, and I think it's also a problem that in the design of the protocol designers, so I'll stand for this, where it's like, well, the protocol designers try to like form the market in a certain way where it was in their heads, like we need the home stakers, so we will do this weird staking design like this, and it will play out like this, but the real world was very different from their theorized kind of ideal, and then Lido came along and like fixed the problem that was there, right? Like staking basically wasn't good for Ethereum, and then Lido made it great, and it's great for ecosystem, like more is staked, and they got the reward for that in terms of like a lot of TVL, and it's a good product, but you could have prevented some of that. I would say this is like my opinion, that if you like design your protocol already with that in mind, that this will happen, like you have to watch the reality of the other ecosystems also and see what's happening there and kind of take these lessons. And I think some of the protocol designers haven't done that so well in the past, and yeah.
The other thing I was going to say like really quickly about governance, like it's so weird, is that like, you know, you can have like, I'm going to have carrots for lunch today. Right? And I vote, and like everybody votes like 60% yes. And it's like, I don't want carrots for lunch. I guess I'll just like propose this afternoon that I don't want carrots for lunch again. And hopefully everybody votes no, right? And it's like the idea of I forget the term for it, but essentially like what is like when someone votes yes or no on something and it passes with a majority opinion, that like, is that the end all be all, or do we like just keep voting on it until we get the answer that I want, not the answer that like particularly is like probably best for the ecosystem? And I think like we've seen that a lot with
Brexit.
Yeah, Brexit's a great example. That's like off chain. So that's a good example. There's like other ones as well. I think like multiple times with Cosmos. Like if you then like when Terra went into like ultra print mode and there was just way too many Luna and everybody could vote on everything and propose all these different crazy like proposals, right? It was like, oh my God, like my Telegram is blowing up with like all the votes because there's just like so many things, right? And so I think like best practices kind of need to be started to considered about like when we vote on something, like what's the timeline before we can vote on the exact same thing again? It's kind of crazy sometimes when you think.
I have maybe one last question for you all, and I think you're bringing it up a little bit, right? The initial set of validators that get established when new chains pop up is quite rigid, it seems like, and that is also right around like this power balance in who governs these chains, and it usually is sort of like the usual suspects. Like you guys are always there, like we are there often. How do you see that changing? And like, right, you were talking about like efficient markets, right? You should see this sort of redelegation But yeah, I'd be curious as to like how you guys are thinking, if you guys think about it at all, right? If you don't want to curtail yourselves on purpose and you want to see other competition, but then it's like you get the pitch deck first to like invest, and then you get like invest in them, and you get like incentivized testnet tokens and more foundation delegations because they want to be friendly with you because you can support them. So I'd be curious as to like all four of your opinions on like what should be done with like these actually inefficient movement of tokens and redelegation on validator leaderboards.
Well, it's quite hard to say like, okay, you're delegators, you should relegate to just like create something quite decentralized. So you mentioned the fact that if there is like a new blockchain, it will start like completely differently, totally depend on foundation. So the foundation will decide like first, do I need like some invest? If they are raising, then okay, the top validator set will only be the people that invest on it. If there is like an incentivized testnet, people will have like kind of token, but most of them are just not really known guys and literally just drop off the set and after that complain about it, obviously. But the fact is, yeah, it's a decentralized world. Like if someone want to put like 100 million on the table and just be first and try to have like most of the chain, you cannot do anything about that. So the only thing we have seen in quite low amount of chain is like the foundation got the fund and delegated quite nicely to everyone. So it will be like something like 2 or 4% of the chain to everyone. So it's quite like I don't know if you look at it, but for example in Sentinel in the Sentinel blockchain, it's quite like well reported. And if you see like some chain like Kava, not to say, it's only like Kraken or Binance, and it's literally like the centralized exchange that got most of the power. So it's not like quite properly balanced, but it's a team decision. Like you cannot do anything about that. So as a validator on our side, we try to just we're not gonna lie, we try to invest on the good protocol we like and be on the top. So people just know us and we are supporting the project, we are working on it. But yeah, it's totally depend of the foundation.
Yeah, like the barrier of entry is actually not that high. Testnet, go to testnet, operate on the testnet, period. Like if you are an individual person who's interested in a project, like, right now, Namada is running testnet. Right now, Penumbra is running testnet. Right now...
Once the chain's live though, the barrier can be super high. Like the Atom seed price is like $15 million.
Oh, Celestia testnet is running right now, right? And so my point being is that like you look at Polygon, right? And like there's proof of stake, there's like 150, right, validators that are allowed right now. And like the last one, like no 150 is like, it's like offline half the time. Like that's the barrier of entry is, right? And so like if you are there at testnet and there's a new project that you really like and you want to be involved in like their ecosystem, you're active in the Discord, you're active in like the Telegram chat, you're running testnet, they know who you are. And ultimately like these like teams, like they want to have people who are actively engaged running, and they will delegate foundation tokens to you if you ask them to. And so like it's not that hard to like get involved if you want to. You got to get up and like bootstrap yourself a little bit and then like do the work.
Yeah, if you are just like trying to create your brand and get on the active set, it's a fucking war, man. You have to go deep, like literally like talk to them every day and go out and literally it's commercial things, like it's a business.
Yeah, it's a business. And the other thing I would say is like that Figment will help. Like we will absolutely help you.
Right, let's hear what Felix has.
Right, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think so. I think in general, right, this is a problem that happens in many places in the world where the people in power get like lazy and they shift the money between them in a way. And I think the Cosmos ecosystem is like nicely designed to kind of disrupt that by being like many chains and like kind of evolutionary from the ground up, where new chain will spring up and then there is a new opportunity for other people to get into power in a way, like what we're saying, right? You're going in this new ecosystem, you can establish yourself there, and maybe that new ecosystem will disrupt also like some of the older ones, because I guess there is certainly some dynamics where like also empires, right, get like power becomes corrupted, and the only way to kind of disrupt it, I think, is to move and like an innovation and start to kind of launch more chains, do more things, and hopefully try to like evolve the system through that. And
yeah, I think it's great that like for the early stages, like the people who are building the chain, running test nets, etc., are the ones getting delegation. That makes total sense. I think that's awesome. I do think there is a problem when a chain gets a bit later, gets bigger, that like it's hard to get into the active set, right? And I think that could be improved probably with more slots, right? So more validators in total, and potentially like liquid staking and other rebalancing things where people have nicer ways to spread their stake across validators. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we're up. Thank you so much, guys.
thanks, Daniel.
Thanks.